Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 27th of October, 2025. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I said I was going to do a refuel on Saturday in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, then I said I was going to do it on Sunday, and now it's Monday and I'm finally doing it. I almost didn't do it. I was kind of sitting here just before thinking, oh god, it's already like 4 p.m, I'm gonna like have dinner soon, do I have enough time to do a refuel? Because you guys will remember I used to do refuels really late, like 10 p.m, but like that's when I'm in bed these days. So my whole kind of routine's been changed a lot. But yeah, I figured, no, I need to do it. I've got a lot to talk about. There is a lot to talk about, honestly. I mean, I haven't done one for a couple of weeks now. Well, I don't know how long it's been, actually. It's probably been longer than a couple of weeks. 11th of October was the last one. That's a bit over a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks there. But hey, I'm back now. But yeah, I think like I'll do today's episode, and then obviously Dev Connect's coming up on the 15th of November. I'll be flying out for that to Argentina there. I'll probably try to do one more before then. And then when I get back, maybe I'll do one more. And then from then, I actually plan to take a proper break again. So I want to take a break during the kind of, I guess, like holiday period. So from maybe after Fusaka goes live. So if Fusaka goes live early December, I would want to take my break from then until like the new year sort of thing. And that break would actually encompass not being on, the Discord channel, which I'm still quite active in, by the way. Even though I'm not doing refuels, I'm still very active in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. I'm in there pretty much every day. I'm not that active on Twitter anymore, to be honest. I hardly post tweets, and I don't even go on Twitter every day. It's kind of freeing. Honestly, you guys should try it. But yeah, it's going to be another one of those breaks because I think I need it. I think it's healthy to do those sorts of things. And I know a lot of people that are actually planning to take a break over the kind of Christmas period there. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also looking forward to Dev Connect as well. I think there's going to be a lot of you at Dev Connect from what I've seen, and it's going honestly, it's going to be a great event. I think, like from everything I've seen, from the fact that it's going to be in Buenos Aires, where there's obviously a lot of crypto presence already. It just feels like it's going to be a really kind of invigorating conference, and I honestly can't wait for it. It's not not too far away now. Less than 20 days till I fly out at least, and I'll get there on the 15th. Be jet lagged as hell, so I'll probably have to get over the jet lag, but then go straight into it and enjoy my time there. But anyway, enough of the logistics related stuff. Let's get into the news over the past 2 to 3 weeks. Now, of course, some of this news will be stale to you guys because it's like 2 weeks old or something like that, but it is still worth discussing. And what I wanted to start with is, I guess, like a bit of news that was drama / controversial / like there was FUD around it, but I kind of missed the FUD because I wasn't on Twitter, which is actually really great, but then I saw it anyway because people were sharing it with me. But it's all got to do with Dankrad leaving the Ethereum Foundation and joining Tempo. And for those of you who don't know or don't remember, Tempo is the new layer 1 that Stripe is building in partnership with Paradigm, which is the VC firm, one of the biggest VC firms in the industry. Now, obviously, Dankrad has been around for a very long time in Ethereum land. He's been very instrumental in Ethereum land for a bunch of different things. I think he's most famous for coming up with or working on dank sharding or proto-dank sharding, which is known as EIP 4844 or blobs. He worked on that with Proto Lambda. Yeah, he's done a bunch of stuff in the Ethereum ecosystem for I think 7 years until recently. He was with the Ethereum Foundation for 7 years there. Now, of course, him moving to Tempo or just leaving the Ethereum Foundation altogether stirred up a lot of controversy because there's always, I guess, controversy about Ethereum. There's always fight about Ethereum, but a lot of people were saying, hey, look, the Ethereum's going to lose because the Ethereum ecosystem can't keep talent in the ecosystem. Now, I don't think that's what happened here with Dankrad, and I don't think generally that's a true statement, but Dankrad put out his own tweet here explaining, that he's going to Tempo, what he wants to focus on, so on and so forth. I didn't necessarily like this tweet because it doesn't actually explain much. It just kind of was, I guess, like a generic kind of tweet of like, hey, I'm joining Tempo. I'm thankful for my time at the Ethereum Foundation and what I worked on within the Ethereum ecosystem. And I think, Tempo is going to be friendly to Ethereum here, which, like, I mean, if you're like me, you kind of know that's bullshit. Like, it's actually incompatible for L1s to be friends with each other. Like, it doesn't make any sense from like an incentive perspective, but also from just like a kind of, I guess, like human tribal perspective, because as we know, each L1 has its own tribe. It really doesn't make sense. And we even see it within the L2s as well. Like the L2s don't get along. The L2s all love Ethereum, right? They all support Ethereum, like the Ethereum blockchain L1, but the L2s themselves, there's so much infighting. So I actually don't think that that's possible no matter what you are, like no matter kind of what L1 you are, and no matter how many times you say we're complementary to Ethereum, I just don't think that's the case there. But beyond that, because Dankrad didn't really go into details about why he's moved to Tempo, there's a lot of speculation about why he moved, of course. So the obvious, I guess, like speculation was around, okay, he just moved for the money, right? Because I'm sure Tempo offered him a large salary on top of a very large token bag, essentially, right? Because we all know Tempo's going to have a token. It recently raised at a $5 billion fully diluted valuation. Who knows if that valuation is going to hold once they do their token or anything like that, or if they raise at at another higher valuation. But essentially, people made the obvious conclusion that, okay, well, Dankrad went there for the bag, and I'm sure that's part of it. But like Dankrad is, I guess, like valuable enough as a person and smart enough as a person and smart enough in this ecosystem to not only go somewhere for the bag, but then people were confused and they asked, okay, well, if it's not for just for the bag, then why did he go to Tempo? Why didn't he go to one of these L2s that are like more Ethereum aligned, or I guess like in the Ethereum ecosystem? Why did he go to what is, for all intents and purposes, a competitor? And my answer to that is essentially speculation, because pretty much everything I'm saying is speculation, because again, he hasn't really given his reasoning behind this, at least from what I've seen. But my speculation would be, well, maybe he actually truly believes that Tempo is complementary to Ethereum. And the reason I believe this is because he actually posted another tweet the other day. You might have missed it because it was just a random reply that he posted, basically saying that he thinks that Tempo is not competing with Ethereum because Tempo is only focusing on payments, which I thought was incredibly naive, because like Tempo is L1 blockchain, right? It's an EVM L1 chain. It's not just going to be focused on payments. They're going to want to do everything. So they are directly trying to compete with Ethereum. And I think to believe they're not is naive. But if Dankrad actually believes that they're not going to compete with Ethereum and they're just going to be a payments layer, then that, it makes it kind of understandable, and it makes sense that he went there with the express intention of being able to help them build a payment, a kind of like a good payments layer using the EVM, which will then feed value back to Ethereum by onboarding more people. So if you follow that train of logic, you kind of get to a reasonable spot, right? But again, as I said, I think it's incredibly naive to think that Tempo is going to only be doing payments. They're going to be doing everything. Because they're EVM, it's going to be very easy for these other apps like Uniswap and Aave and others to just deploy on there, especially like Uniswap. I mean, Paradigm is very close with the Uniswap guys, so I think Uniswap would probably be deployed there from day one. Like, I don't think that that's far-fetched to say at all. So yeah, there's those two kind of major things there, which is kind of what I guess like I'd been kind of speculating on, and what I had kind of, I guess, like been saying in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. Another big thing is that when it comes to people that have been working on something for so long, or working in a particular environment for so long, they naturally want a change. Like, as I said, Dankrad has been in the Ethereum Foundation for a long time. Like, I'm not sure if he was at the Ethereum Foundation for those whole 7 years that he worked within Ethereum, but he's worked within Ethereum for 7 years. And, as a full-time job, also being paid under market rates. We all know that the Ethereum Foundation doesn't pay like a lot of money, right, compared to where the money you could make working somewhere else. And that's a consequence of a bunch of different reasons. Number one reason is that the EF just doesn't have that much money. Yes, they have like a lot of ETH still. If you want to kind of look at the ETH that they have today, I think it's like $1.5 billion worth or something like that. But then you have to keep in mind that money has to last a very long time, and they can't raise more money. Like, no one's giving the Ethereum Foundation more money. The Ethereum Foundation doesn't have the ability to issue new ETH to itself in order to raise more money, right? Or to issue new ETH to sell to whoever to raise more money here. Whereas something like Tempo, as I said, they just raised at a $5 billion valuation. I think they raised $500 million. So these things can raise, and then they can also issue these token kind of bonuses to these employees. So it's a startup versus like a traditional company kind of, or I guess like a mature company perspective here. And yes, the Ethereum Foundation will pay out like ETH bonuses as well, but it's very different, right? Like, it's a very different thing. Like, imagine if you were able to kind of price those ETH bonuses as if ETH was worth $5 billion as Tempo is worth, instead of $500 billion, right? Because if you're pricing them at a $500 billion valuation, then there's 100x upside just gone altogether, right? Whereas, and there's no guarantee that obviously Tempo is ever going to be worth that, but the logic flows is that if you think it's going to be lucrative and you think this thing is going to actually do very well, then you're happy taking those tokens at a low valuation, hoping that they kind of like price into high valuation. And that's what happens everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of talk about NVIDIA's early engineers having so much NVIDIA stock because they got it when it was cheap and they've held it and now it's worth so much and they're all millionaires. I think pretty much everyone at the company is a millionaire from the fact that they all got like stock options and because the stock's done so well, like over 10x. Even if you only got 100 grand of stock options, 5 years ago, pretty sure NVIDIA stock has gone 10x, if not 5 years or 10 years or something like that. I don't know the exact kind of ratio there, but you can see how you could very easily make $1 million if you held onto the stock there. So it's the same kind of, like concept here. So I don't blame anyone for wanting to kind of have a change or go do something else. I don't blame anyone for even going and getting the bag. Like I fully encourage people to do that. But what has really, like irked me, and maybe this is not specifically about Dankrad, but just about the whole kind of tempo thing, but also beyond tempo and crypto generally. What irks me the most is the gaslighting, right? And the lying and the dishonesty and just the bullshit that gets spread. Like, with tempo in particular, we've seen multiple comments from kind of like Paradigm saying that, oh, it's going to be credibly neutral, it's going to be decentralized, we're building this for such and such reason. And then whenever they're questioned at all, they don't reply to those questions. Like I questioned Matt from Paradigm. I basically typed up this whole thing to him a little while ago now, asking, how is it going to be credibly neutral? Why is anyone going to build on Stripe's L1 or Tempo instead of building their own? Like, why would competitors want to help Stripe? Like, it doesn't make any sense from that perspective. And also from a technical perspective, how is an L1 better than an L2? I never got any answers. Radio silence, right? And I've asked that to other people as well, and I never get any satisfactory answers here. And that's what really irks me the most, is that I'm here trying to learn, trying to actually get different perspectives here, and then I don't get those perspectives, and then I give my own opinion on it, and I'm just called an ETH maxi. And that actually is at the heart of what annoys me so much, is that whenever I try to be intellectually curious, the people that I'm asking these questions to usually don't like kind of engaging me in these discussions. And because I don't let them just say whatever they want, I actually call them out on their bullshit. If I think it's bullshit, I keep questioning them. I'm not just going to sit there and take your word as the truth. And I think they hate that. And then they'll just label me as an ETH maxi because it's easier to disregard me as an ETH maxi than it is to actually debate my points. And for those of you that are active in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, you've seen this happen plenty of times before. I've done this with plenty of people. It's always the same pattern. I engage in the debate. I try to get to the truth. I'm not gaslighting anyone, and I'm not putting on my ETH maxi hat and yelling at anyone. I'm actually trying to have a conversation. And then because I keep hitting back at them and because I don't agree with their points, they get frustrated and then they just melt down or call me an ETH maxi or whatever it is. So that is kind of at the heart as well of what irks me about this stuff. And especially when it comes to tempo, where it's just like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to kind of say that it's going to be credibly neutral, decentralized, especially because it's not live yet as well. But yeah, so that's kind of my general take on the whole Dankrad moving over thing. And I think people calling for the Ethereum Foundation to pay more to these people, to the people working there, I think that's like looking at it in the wrong way. Not that people shouldn't be paid what they're worth, but guys, like these people aren't prisoners at the EF, right? Like they're really smart people. They could get a job anywhere they want, but people work on things for more than just money. And I think that's lost on crypto Twitter because a lot of the people on there are just like all about the money. They don't really care about anything else. They don't even care about the industry, to be honest. They're just here because they think they can make money from it. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But then when you imprint that kind of view on other people who are actually in this industry to work in it because they actually care about it, you're going to get the wrong conclusion. And, this applies to me too. Like I could monetize so many different things about what I do. Like I've passed on so much money in the past, not just from not monetizing the Daily Gwei, but also from like advisorships with, I guess, like not the best projects, investing in different projects as an angel. Like I've skipped on a lot of these things, guys. And it's simply because like I don't like, I want to work on stuff that I want to work on. I want to kind of put my I guess, name behind things that I actually care about and believe in. And I don't want to support things that I don't. But yeah, to crypto Twitter or to like the usual, I guess, retail person that's only here for the money, they don't see that. And I think if you talk to people at the Ethereum Foundation, of which there are hundreds of them, they will tell you this. They will tell you that they are working on Ethereum because they want to work on something that actually means something. They don't, maybe they do wish they were paid more. I can't speak for all of them, but from the ones I've spoken to, they definitely always talk about wanting to work on something bigger than themselves. And they're not in it for just the money here. And at the same time, if you're in it for just the money, there are companies within the Ethereum ecosystem that you can go work for. But these people still stay at the Ethereum Foundation. They still stay there for years and years and years. And they give up lucrative opportunities. I know, when it comes to, I guess, Dankrad and a few others, like Justin Drake at the EF, they gave up their eigenlayer advisorships, which in hindsight, I think was a mistake to let the crypto Twitter mob kind of, I guess, like make them give that up. And then the Ethereum Foundation to basically pivot and say, well, no one can really do advisorships because conflicts of interest and all this stuff, which I get. But at the same time, could there be like a reality where Dankrad was able to keep his eigenlayer advisorship and that would have kept him in the Ethereum ecosystem if you believe he only went to Tempo for the bag? I don't know. Maybe that's a timeline that could have happened, but we're not in that timeline, right? We're in this timeline. So there's maybe no use speculating about that, but that's another way to think about it here. But Justin Drake gave up his, I guess, advisorship as well, but he's still working on Ethereum. And I would be very surprised if he was to leave Ethereum and go anywhere else within the next 5 years. Maybe after that, he thinks, well, I'm done with my Ethereum core protocol work. I delivered what I want to deliver. Now I'm going to go somewhere else and do something else. I'm sure that's a possibility. I would hope that he goes somewhere that actually aligns with the values that I think he has rather than something like a Tempo or another corporate kind of, I guess, like chain. Because, yeah, I mean, it was surprising too for people to see this. They're like, why is Dankrad, who worked on Ethereum, going to what is probably the opposite of Ethereum in terms of like values and I guess like the way it's being built through values of decentralization and going and working at some big corporate. And that's why there's the cynical take of he just went for the bag. So I get that. I understand that. But again, this is all speculation because he hasn't actually dived deep into this himself. Maybe he'll do an interview with Bankless or someone else and explain himself further. I hope he does because I'd love to get his take on this because I just speculated for the last 10 or so minutes on what his motives are and what he, why he moved and all that. But yeah, but based on some of his other comments, I actually think there's just a greater chance that he just wanted to go work somewhere else. The bag was enticing as well. And he really does think that Tempo is only going to do payments, so it's not competing with Ethereum. So it's A-okay for him to do that. I don't know if that's like the truth, but that's what I maybe would choose to believe until he's, until proven otherwise, until he actually expands on why he moved there. But that's my take on kind of that situation there. I know it's like old news now. I say old news. It happened like 10 days ago, which I guess feels like a lifetime in crypto, but I figured it was worth covering that one there for you guys. All right, moving on. So let's talk about some tech-related stuff. Enough of the drama. Let's move on to tech. So as you guys know, there's been a push to increase the Ethereum L1 gas limit for quite a while now, actually. So this has been going on, I think. So if you were to say like when the push actually started, you could argue that it started like maybe mid last year and it really accelerated this year. And it's accelerating like every year now. And I think that there is a real big push to, like, especially into 2026, to really accelerate this here. So the reason I bring it up today is because the clients, all the clients that will be available for Fusaka, so essentially when the client releases go out for Fusaka for the mainnet release, will be about a month before Fusaka goes live. Those will have the default of a 60 million gas limit, which means that we could be looking at a 60 million gas limit in November, essentially. Like if we're within the next, I guess, like couple of weeks, right? Because the testnets have forked well. I think the last testnet's forking soon. And then if that goes well, there'll be mainnet dates tentatively early December. And then once the mainnet clients are released and everyone upgrades, we should see the 60 million gas limit happen, I guess you could say within the next month, because it does depend on people upgrading their client software, of course, but you can do it manually. But like people do wait for the defaults here. But we'll see 60 million, and currently it's 45 million. So 60 million would be a 33% gas limit increase here, which is awesome because Ethereum L1 gas fees are actually relatively cheap still. You can see here, I've got the block native gas estimator here. Gwei is at 0.2. right? It's 0.2. So if we increase by another 33% to 60 million, and all else being equal, of course, like let's just assume that demand stays the same here, then that 0.2 is going to drop even further. Like I don't know, I'm not going to do the math right now, but that's going to drop even further, right? That's going to drop to maybe 0.1 or 0.1.5, probably not 0.1, but like maybe 0.115. Probably like not a huge difference. Like I mean, it might be for like the marginal user, but I don't know how many people that are sensitive to fees are actually using L1 these days. They would have moved to the L2s or even, I guess, like other L1s, right? But this is part of the wider trend of increasing the gas limit of Ethereum in order to get it to, I guess, like, you know, not just 60 million, but like 100 million. 150 million, 200 million, 300 million, right? That's the kind of path that we're trying to be on right now. And there's a lot of work being done in that area because it's not just increasing the gas limit, right? It's basically getting the network to the state where you can increase the gas limit safely, because we could, in theory, increase the gas limit as high as we wanted to today, but the network would likely break, and the network would fall over. It would basically kill the network. You'd have to walk it back, and then Ethereum would lose its 100% uptime achievement there. We don't want that. We also don't want the network to go down. Like, it's less about the achievement and more about the fact that we don't want the network to go down. We don't want any kind of disruption of the network here. And speaking of disruptions of the network, the other day, AWS had a major outage for quite a while, and from what I could see, there was actually no drop-off of validator participation on the Ethereum network. I think like nothing, which was quite surreal actually, because that means that, I mean, like if the data I was looking at was correct, that either means that that particular outage didn't affect the, I guess, like where the Ethereum validators are run, which I doubt. But the other picture it paints is that a lot of validators or a lot of node operators aren't on AWS, which is very bullish, because a lot of people like to say that, oh, if AWS goes down, Ethereum goes down, which isn't true. But it's good that we've got, I guess, definitive proof of this now, rather than us saying it. And every time this happens and every time Ethereum doesn't go down, it's even better. So yeah, I like looking at it from that perspective there. But we can look forward to a 60 million gas limit within the next month or so, I think. All right, speaking of making the network more performant in service of not only raising the gas limit, but in service of taking load off of node operators generally, there was a pretty big breakthrough on the P2P side of the consensus layer here, and I think this was done by a team at the Ethereum Foundation in collaboration with Prylabs. I know that there are a bunch of teams working on this. I don't know who all they are. I don't know all the people working on it, but essentially they've been able to take a big kind of networking load off the network by doing a few tweaks. Now, of course, this is very technical. I'm not going to explain it to you guys on the Refuel. There is a thread here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But essentially, it means that there's going to be, I guess, like load taken off the network, which means that we can safely do things like increase the gas limit even further, put more load on the network in terms of blobs as well, because it's not just the gas limit, it's also blobs. Because with Fusaka, we've got PeerDAS coming, but PeerDAS is not starting at its like theoretical maximum. It's starting at a very low blob count, but then we want to kind of do those blob-only forks in order to basically increase that over time and increase that to the point where essentially like blobs are extremely scalable and L2s don't have to worry about it, and then we'll have a working PeerDAS on the network basically. So it was great to see that there. Just always these improvements happening, guys. Like, it may not be something that's like super exciting. It may not be like a headline thing like a mainnet upgrade like Fusaka or Pectra or whatever it is, but it's always happening, and it's always really positive for the network. And these things compound over time. The more improvements we do, the more we can scale, the more really cool things we can do, like even ZK related stuff. Like, there's been a lot of progress happening there actually, and that, now that I mentioned the ZK stuff, that's a perfect segue into what I was going to talk about next, which is essentially a tweet from Justin Drake talking about ZK related stuff, and in particular being able to do a ZK VM within L1 Ethereum, and essentially getting the cost of this down to the point where you can prove an L1 ETH block or slot, I guess you could say, within that 12-second window, because slots today is 12 seconds, but then we actually want to reduce slot times as well. We want to go as low as 4 seconds. So the goal is to essentially be able to generate a proof relatively cheaply and quick enough so that 99.99% of proofs, say, are done within a 12-second window, and then I guess like we're going to go to 8 seconds first, and then like maybe 6 seconds or 4-second window, so that we can have a fully ZK-ified L1 kind of on the execution side of things, which is part of the whole lean Ethereum roadmap, which I've talked about previously there. So, yeah, I mean, you can go give Justin's tweet a read for yourself. He was basically quote tweeting this team Brevis, who is another ZK team here, where they announced something called Pico Prism, which they're calling the state-of-the-art ZK VM for Ethereum real-time proving. 99.6% of blocks were proven under 12 seconds, so at a 6.9-second average with 64 RTX 5090 GPUs. Obviously, that's incredibly expensive. People like talk about this and they say, well, isn't that just like equivalent to mining, right? Like, or proof of work? And it is in a way, but the thing is that you have to remember that a lot of this stuff is still very early, and it's not like proof of work in that you have to keep throwing hardware at it in order to, because of the difficulty adjustment. It's like this arbitrary thing. With this sort of stuff, it actually is going to go the other way, because these things are going to get more efficient over time, and they're going to be cheaper and cheaper over time. So eventually, like if you were to go to like the Holy Grail, you'd want to be able to be able to generate a proof in under 12 seconds on like one 5090 GPU, right? And yes, that's still expensive, because these GPUs, because of the AI boom, are not cheap. I don't know how much a 5090 is in the US, but in Australia, it's extremely expensive. So if you wanted to be like a prover, you obviously would have to have like some kind of startup capital here, or you could use your gaming machine if you wanted to do it. But it, realistically, you want it to be a dedicated machine, because you want it to be running 24/7. But yeah, I mean, the barrier to entry is a lot higher than just being a validator on the network, because these roles are going to be split up eventually. Into basically being like a validator, I guess like a proposer, proposing blocks, and a tester, voting on blocks, and then a prover, proving blocks. So you can choose your own adventure sort of thing, and you choose which roles you want to do. I assume that most people are not going to be a prover. It's not going to be worth it for them. But then you want diversity of provers as well. You don't just want one prover. It's kind of like the sequencer thing, where it's like you don't just want one sequencer. You want like multiple, but at the same time, you want a fallback as well. Because with the sequencers of the L2s, you have the L1 that you can fall back to as a sequencer as well for a lot of them. So that's like kind of taken care of there. But like with this sort of stuff, if we need to prove all the blocks, the fallback would be, I guess, like, I mean, it depends on how it's done. And like from my understanding, the fallback would be onto just a regular kind of, I guess, like proposer of a block, but then they wouldn't be able to prove the block. So I don't know if that would break things and just basically essentially miss the slot here. So yeah, we'll have to see how that kind of pans out. I'm speculating here now, because there's a lot of open design questions around this. But essentially, yeah, the like most people just aren't going to be provers. But I do think we can have a healthy prover network. I don't think that it's going to be just one person. Like, it doesn't even have to be that many people, right? If you have like 10 unique prover operators, that's enough, I think. Like, I mean, because it's a one of n trust assumption, right? It's not like they have to come to consensus. They're just proving the block. The consensus is still done by the validators on the network, and by the ones who are testing, the testers, I guess I should say here. Whereas the proving is more like, I guess, building a block. Like, so how today we've only got like 5 builders, and yeah, it's not great from like a censorship resistance perspective, but we're dealing with that with Fossil. But then when it comes to provers, like from my understanding, you don't need a lot of them essentially, and it doesn't actually like matter that much. Especially if like anyone can be a prover, which they will be able to be. So if like all 10 of those provers for some reason stop proving blocks and go offline, then someone else can just spin one up quickly and away you go, right? And there'll obviously be economic incentives here for this as well. But you can go give Justin's tweet a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, speaking of L1 improvements, this isn't a kind of improvement directly on the L1 itself in terms of the protocol, but this is a demo of preconfirmations. So as you guys know, preconfirmations, or you may not know, I mean, I've talked about it a bunch on the refuel before, but if you're just tuning in for the first time, preconfirmations is essentially a way to make it so that instead of having to wait up to 12 seconds for your confirmation, for your transaction to be confirmed on the L1, it would be done in like 1 second or less, essentially. So the way this is done is essentially you have like a network of people that are kind of pre-confirming your transaction. So essentially they're saying, well, this transaction will end up in a block in 12 seconds or less, depending on when you've done your transaction, or maybe more because it depends on the fee that you paid. So I'm just going to confirm that for them on their end, and it's just like a user interface kind of perspective here. They're going to see that it's confirmed, and then like I'll throw in their transaction into that slot, and all is well and good here. So that it's like a UX thing, right? It's not like it does have some kind of trade-offs here in that like it's not an actual confirmation of your transaction, right? It's like what they call an optimistic confirmation, which essentially says that it's optimistically confirmed because we're relatively certain that it's going to be confirmed and included in a block or in a slot in a block within a slot, but right now it's not. And obviously, like, no one is going to be accepting pre-confirmed transactions as truth. They're going to wait for the L1 block to be confirmed, and they're probably going to wait for finality, depending on the transaction size too, right? In order to like fully confirm it here. But really, in reality, like even just waiting 12 seconds is not that big of a deal. Like obviously from a user experience perspective and from the front end perspective, we want the users to be able to feel like their transactions are going through very quickly. But if you're waiting for like just like proper confirmation of that transaction, 12 seconds is nothing. And then, as I said, we're going to reduce that down to 4 seconds, hopefully. So yeah, but pre-confirmations is definitely still needed because I guess like the easiest way to explain it is that it makes the L1 feel like the L2s do today, because the L2s obviously have shorter block time, shorter slot time. They don't have slots, I guess. They just have like shorter block times. It's usually a second or less. So your transaction is essentially confirmed very, very quickly. I guess for the end user as well, like 1 second is fine. Like I think you can think of it like loading a website. If a website takes more than a few seconds to load, you obviously like start getting frustrated and you'll probably click off that website or go and check if something's wrong with that website. I think the same is true for transaction confirmations, where essentially if it's taking a few seconds on Ethereum L1, you expect that. Like as a regular user, you would expect that. But on an L2, if it's taking longer than a few seconds, you're probably like, well, okay, something's wrong here. Like what's wrong, right? If it takes a second, that's fine. If they say they can do it in less time, that like 200 milliseconds, humans don't perceive time that quickly, guys. That's more for like the bots in the back end being able to be more efficient with their money and being able to be more efficient with the liquidity here rather than the human. So it is great to get transaction confirmations as kind of short as possible, like get that down to as close to zero as possible. It's never going to be zero, obviously, but like as close as you can get there. But in terms of like the actual human user, 1 second is totally fine. 1 second, even 2 seconds isn't that bad. Like I never I never sit there and think, oh, it's been 2 seconds. I'm getting frustrated that it took 2 seconds for my transaction to confirm or for a website to load. Like I'm actually happy waiting. Even when you're going and paying like at the FPOS terminal, at a kind of like restaurant or shop or whatever it is, like it's never done like that quickly. Like it can take up to a couple of seconds and you're not standing there frustrated about it. You look at the machine, you say that it's confirmed, you're like, okay, cool, and away you go. So I think there needs to be obviously realistic expectations here, but where this does matter, as I said, is for like the automations in the background, like bots and stuff like that, especially as AI bots keep coming online too. That's another big deal here. But yeah, you can go watch the demo video here. It's only 18 seconds long of this happening. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so some big movement on the Max EB side of things. So as you guys know, Max EB was included as part of the Pectra upgrade, and it essentially allows you to stake up to 2048 ETH per validator instead of the 32 ETH per validator. Now, there is a really cool site that you can track this on called petrified.com, made by the guys. Sorry. I don't know who this was actually made by. There was another tool that I was going to talk about that was made by the guys at Peer 2. It's a tool that allows you to consolidate things, but the Petrified tool, I actually don't know. Oh, it's made by 0x Pulp here. This is their Twitter account. So yeah, kudos to 0x Pulp for making this. But the reason why I bring this up today is because we now have over 10% of all ETH staked as part of accumulating validators. So what that means is that they've converted their validators to the 0x02 credentials, which means that they can now stake up to 2048 per ETH per validator. Now, as you can see in the chart below, not everyone is staking 2048 ETH per validator. Some are, like you can see here, that around 212,000 ETH are staking 2048. Then there is over 500,000 ETH below 2048. I guess you could say between 1920 ETH and 2048, there's like 200,000 ETH. And then, you can kind of look at this chart and see for yourself what this looks like here. But the reason why this is exciting is because, as you guys know, I was a huge champion of Max EB, so it's a personal kind of excitement for me. But also, again, this takes load off the network because, as you guys know, it says here we've got 1 million validators on the network. That doesn't mean we have 1 million node operators on the network. It doesn't mean there's 1 million stakers, right? What matters is node operators, because one node operator can have many validators. For example, the biggest node operators have hundreds of thousands of operators. Like Lido, for example, has 220,000 validators or something because they've got 22% of the network. I'm actually going to bring up Hill Dobby's ETH2 staking dashboard here. So yeah, you can see Lido is at 23.3% of the network, so they would have 230,000 validators, right? 8.4 million ETH staked here. So that's one, I guess that's one collective, and within that there are different node operators. Maybe Lido isn't the best example here because there are different kind of node operators in that, but there's not 1 million of them. The best example is probably a centralized exchange, actually. I said Lido because it's the biggest, but Binance and Coinbase, Binance has 9.1%, so that means they have around 91,000 validators. Oh, you can see here they have 103,000 validators, sorry, I should say. So from that kind of like pool there, that's just Binance running 100,000 validators. So you can see what I mean by the fact that like node operators is what matters. So why is this a good thing? Like, why do we want to reduce the number of validators? Well, because like if adding more validators to the network does nothing for the network, because it's all if it's all part of the same node operators, then it actually has a negative impact on the network because each validator that's added adds an overhead to the network. It's very, very small, like each individually validator. It's tiny, like as a collective network overhead. But once you kind of add this up and you start adding another 100,000 validators, right? That's another 10% load on the network. So essentially you want to reduce that as much as you can. The ideal scenario is that we have the same number of validators as we do kind of node operators, but that's not going to happen at 2048 ETH per validator, obviously. But I guess like even halving it from here, even if we're getting to only 500,000 validators, would be it's not an exact 1-to-1, but it would be like it's not like a 50% reduction in network kind of load here. But it would still be a pretty substantial reduction in network load, which means we can do really cool things like obviously getting more blobs on the network, like increasing the gas limit, like shortening the slot times, right? Because there's less kind of overhead on the network to gossip the blocks around everywhere and to do the attesting and voting and all that sorts of stuff there. So when you look at it from that perspective, everyone should be cheering for these validators to be kind of consolidated here, which is great to see there's movement on this. And Pectra didn't happen that long ago, guys. It was in April, right? So it's good to see this movement. I remember saying at the time it would be like a long-term thing here. It wouldn't happen overnight, but it will happen because it makes sense. It will happen because you as a accumulating validator, you can compound your stake instantly. There's no need to build up 32 ETH in order to spin up another validator, right? You can just put it on the same validator here, and also you can kind of reduce your network footprint as well. That might matter for you as a smaller node operator. Maybe the bigger ones don't care that much, but the smaller ones definitely do, especially the solo stakers. That's the thing that really excites me, is that the solo stakers can do this and compound their rewards here as well, which is really, really great to see there. But yeah, anyway, just figured I'd give you guys an update on that one there. All right, so there's a new page on the Ethereum Foundation website called prototyping.ethereum.foundation, which essentially has a bunch of different kind of links and resources to things that are being tested on, or I guess like worked on by the protocol prototyping team at the Ethereum Foundation. So what this team does is they build end-to-end implementations of the new ideas for Ethereum's core protocol. So there's obviously a lot of new ideas, as you guys know, a lot of EIPs that get proposed here, and they need to be prototyped. They need to be tested before they're even considered to be made onto the network. And that's exactly what this team wants to do, is they want to kind of test this stuff, they want to prototype this stuff, so that when it actually kind of comes up for serious discussion, there is actual data to point to, there is actual work to point to, rather than just like how it would work in theory. We've actually got something put into practice here. And the reason why I really like this website is because it's been hard for me to keep track of all this stuff happening, because I see, Tony's tweets and that's all well and good, or I see a tweet from someone else here, but then the tweets get lost, right? So this is a really great website, a really great resource to keep track of all of that. So if that's of interest to you, you should go check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And it's a really great way of keeping track of all of the really exciting stuff that's coming to the Ethereum Ethereum protocol over the next 1, 2, 3, even potentially 5 years. It just depends on what they're working on at any given time. But yeah, it's great to see this because they even say it here. They're helping the community to move beyond just the theory and speculation of the different EIPs and also putting it into practice there. All right, last up here, just a bit of news on the kind of L2 front. So I've got a Grow the Pie tweet here. This one's not about L2 in particular, but I wanted to use this as kind of a springboard. So the Grow the Pie team put together an estimation of when we will actually achieve 10,000 TPS on Ethereum L1 if we were to scale the TPS 3 times per year. So if we did that from here on out, we would get 10K TPS by summer 2031. Obviously, that's a while away. We want to do that before then. So essentially, I guess like this is a study in saying, well, we want to be able to get there faster. Like this is going to take a while. Let's maybe do like a 5 times TPS increase per year instead of a 3 times TPS increase per year, because then we'll be able to get that in maybe like 2028 or something like that rather than 2031. And then of course, like this is also scaling data throughput, which is used by the layer 2s on Ethereum. So it's all well and good to keep scaling here. Now, the Grow the Pie team also has on their website, as you guys know, a really great resource all about L2s just generally, of course. But on their ecosystem tab, I should have had this loaded up before, but I'm loading it up now. On the ecosystem tab here, you can actually see, as I've explained before, like a real-time count of the Ethereum ecosystem TPS, and then also the economic activity on these chains, stablecoin supply, daily TPS, so on and so forth. So you can see that daily TPS is basically at all-time highs for these layer 2s. And I think the other day we had like an all-time high TPS. Yeah, it was. Where was it? Here, I think, or something like that. 24th of September. All-time high TPS, and it wasn't the other day, actually. That was a month ago. There was a tweet from the Grow the Pie team that showed that it went to like thousands of TPS. I think it was just like a snapshot in time. Yeah, actually, it's here. All-time high TPS is 3,100 TPS. This is across the L2s, and I believe L1, but like L1's at like 20 TPS, so it really just doesn't matter, right? It's like 20 TPS or lower. So it really doesn't really count here. It's more about the L2s. So this page should be bookmarked, honestly, guys. You should be visiting this and all the other sections on the Grow the Pie website as much as you can, because it really just shows that things that keep growing. No matter what people say online, no matter what FUD people try to kind of spread about L2s especially, this just shows that they're growing. Like you can spread FUD, but then when you're met with the facts, the FUD just like breaks away like instantly. And I know a lot of people like to spread FUD about L2s because L2s compete with the other L1s out there, and they all, sometimes running scared, I think, that, these L2s are doing really well and they're getting better and better over time. What can we FUD them with? Well, you can't FUD them with like not being used, because they're obviously being used. Some of the FUD still centers around obviously like multi-sigs and how some of them are centralized and so on and so forth. And that's fair, but like that's changing over time as well, like shifting towards stage 2, getting more kind of decentralized overall. And there are other L2s launching as well that are going to be more performant. So yeah, I mean, Mega ETH launch is coming up soon, I think. Yeah, I mean, the FUD just like, it doesn't make any sense. It's never really made much sense, but like there's less and less kind of FUD that you could reason about making sense coming out these days. It's always the same recycled FUD. Like the last couple of weeks, as I said, there was a bunch of FUD on Twitter about certain things, and one of the main things was the Ethereum Foundation because of Dankrad leaving. And I was like, okay, we already did this like 6 months ago. This is all stale FUD. Like this is nothing new. You guys are just literally repeating what was said 6 months ago. And mind you, the Ethereum Foundation is very, very different to what it was like 9 months ago, right? So the FUD is stale. And I think that it stems from like obviously competitors wanting to deride Ethereum, but also from boredom from a lot of people. And honestly, my advice to you guys is just like get off crypto Twitter. Like honestly, it's so noisy, it's so useless. You really don't need to be on there for much. I mean, what you can do if you really want to stay updated on things is just create a list of like the people who just post updates on things and avoid all the drama, and then never look at your For You tab again and just look at this list that you've got, and then you'll get all the updates and it'll be fine. I'm yet to do that. I'm like not even taking my own advice here, but that's what I want to do because I think that's going to be a healthy way for me to have a kind of relationship with Twitter. But yeah, it's not a great place to be, as you guys know. And anyway, enough ranting about that. Moving on here to the last thing I want to talk about. So we always talk about escape hatches of L2s, and we say that, okay, well, because L2s have an escape hatch or what's called a forced inclusion feature, it means that if the L2 was to go offline or is censoring you, you can essentially force your transaction to be included on L1 and still get your money out here. Now, I know that there is a tool on the Superchain website that allows you to do this for optimism chains, so like Base and OP mainnet and chains like that. But there's no universal tool for this yet. Now, what was built here by Apoorv was one that only works with optimism chains so far, but I think they want to expand that out to work with all of the L2s. But essentially, it's a way to force include your transactions on L1 here if an L2, as I said, goes down, or the sequencer goes down, or is censoring you, which is really great, because it's all well and good for those features to actually exist, but if they're not actually able to be used by everyday people, then for all intents and purposes, they don't exist, right? And I think that this is one of the key features. It's the one that I always bring up of L2s. So we should do a lot better of integrating this with wallets, for example, so that the wallet can essentially give you the option of force inclusion if you want to take it. Now, obviously, in the best case, or in the normal case, we don't want this option to have to be used. We don't want the L2s to be censoring or to be offline. But that's not the point. The point is that this option exists for when shit hits the fan, and you know, that's when these things really matter, and that's when these things really shine. So when shit hits the fan, we want people to be able to relatively easily use these features, and I'm glad that someone built this here, but I'm hoping this gets integrated with, you know, wallets, with front ends, with kind of like these new, I guess, like all-in-one solutions like Infinex, for example. These things should be integrated there because it's not hard to integrate, and it's really valuable, I think, for the end user to be able to do this, and it's what sets Ethereum apart with its L2 infrastructure, or at least one of the major things that sets Ethereum apart here on that front there. But yeah, I think that's it on the news side of things today. I just wanted to take a few minutes here to talk more about, I guess, I call it logistics related things, but I guess that's like personal related things here. And you guys can kind of like, you know, close off the podcast or shut off the video if you don't want to listen to me rambling on here for a little bit. But I think a lot of you do because you say that you do in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. So yeah, I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about was generally like my feeling towards the industry, because it's always evolving. You guys know my stance on the industry for quite a while now has been quite sour, I think. And I'm not talking about like Ethereum, but like the wider crypto industry. I really hate the wider crypto industry, if I'm being honest. I actually think it's a cesspool. I think it's an embarrassment. I think it's the reason why crypto has such a bad reputation. And obviously, like, Ethereum is part of that. So Ethereum gets a bad reputation as well. Not to say that Ethereum is perfect, but if I look out at the rest of the ecosystem, there really isn't anything else out there that vibes with me at all. Like, I have zero interest in anything else. I think Bitcoin is a failed experiment. I don't care if it keeps going up. That's not what Bitcoin originally kind of was supposed to be. I think Bitcoin is a failed experiment. I think that all the alt L1s pretty much are just like useless. I mean, there are a couple out there that are doing some things differently, and obviously some of them have been able to gather a user base and people are getting value out of it, so more power to them. But so many of them are just grifts. So many of them just pump the token up so that people can exit, and then all the founders leave once they're vested, the team leaves, and then the thing just dies eventually. So yeah, grifts there. There's a lot of L2s actually these days as well that are grifts, unfortunately. And I think, you know, they haven't gotten that much attention, which is good, but they do exist, of course. There's obviously like a lot of scams still in the industry, a lot of insider trading, which is just ridiculous, but I guess it's legal now because crime. A lot of other stuff like CZ being pardoned. CZ's not a hero, guys. Like, I can't believe the amount of glazing that I saw on Twitter when CZ was pardoned. And I know why it's done. It's because it's like a political thing to do, right? Where you're basically trying not to burn bridges with people, because CZ obviously has a lot of power in this industry. But he's not a good guy, guys. Like, maybe he's not as bad as someone like SBF, but he's not someone who has like the best interests of everyone at heart. He runs a centralized exchange, and one that is incredibly secretive, and one that has, you know, in the past, you know, multiple times, I think, been caught doing dodgy and shady things. Like, And the thing is that people will say, oh, well, they only went after CZ because the Democrats were going after crypto, so the Republicans are just pardoning CZ to make up for that error. I'm like, no. CZ was one of the people they should have been going after. Like, they shouldn't have been going after honest people like the Ethereum Foundation or the core developers or things like that, or Consensus or Uniswap. They should have been going after these people, and they did. But that's another thing, as I said, that's like kind of grossed me out as well, is that, yes, it's great that the Republicans won the presidency, and now we're getting like better crypto legislation. But what was the trade-off for that? The trade-off is what we've got. And again, I don't want to get political about these things because I know people have their own views on things. But like, I'm not American, so I don't have a dog in this race. I actually don't care like about American politics at all, because honestly, it doesn't really affect me in Australia. Yes, obviously, like America is the United States, I should say, is a big place, has a huge effect on the world, and obviously Australia has like trade relationships with the US, and our prime minister meets the president, and so on and so forth. But like, on my day-to-day life and day-to-day basis, like it doesn't affect me. I can't vote in the elections. I can't do anything. Like, why would I? It doesn't make any sense for me to do that. As I said, I'm not American. I'm as far away from American as you can be. My heritage is Italian. My grandparents moved here from Italy, so I'm nowhere near an American, right? I guess the most American I am is that I speak the same language as you guys. You guys being Americans out there that are watching. Not to throw shade at America, but just take away the politics out of this for a sec, and just look at, I guess, like Trump and the people around him as normal people. Don't look at them as Republicans. Don't look at Trump as the president. Just look at them as normal, everyday people. And then from that lens, look at what he's been doing to make himself more money, to enrich himself, the insider trading that he's been doing, all that crap. Like, look at that. Like, if it wasn't political, if he wasn't like associated with politics, everyone would agree that is scammy and grifty and just shitty, and that encourages even more shitty behavior because it's encouraging even more crime to happen within crypto. As I said, he's pardoning people like CZ, right? Like, just take away the politics, and I'm sure even the most diehard Trump supporter should be able to see this. Like, I'm sorry, you can support Trump for other things, like that's fine. If you believe if you kind of care about his policies and his other policies and what they're doing and whatever, like those are things you care about, sure. But when it comes to like fraud and scamming and insider trading, like, it's fucking obvious, guys. And don't get me wrong, like, if you want to bring the politics back into it, the Democrats do it too. Like, they all do it. They all insider trade. That's fine. But like, I can recognize that, again, because I'm not American. I don't have a dog in this race. But to bring it back to my point is that, like, the more of that's done by these high-level people, the president of the fucking United States is doing it, guys. Like, the more it's encouraged, the more it's just normalized, and then we just turn this industry into even more of a scammy mess. So that's why I said, like, my relationship with the industry is evolving, because it's, like, I don't believe it's always going to be like this, but it wasn't like this for a while. It was. I mean, there's always been scams, but it wasn't like the prevailing thing. And then it was, and then there was a lot, like, there's, whenever the market gets hotter, there's always obviously a lot of scams and stuff like that. And then it wasn't for a while, and then we thought, well, we've cleansed all the biggest scams. Like, this was in 2023. Like, SBF is gone, Terra's gone, like, all these things are gone. Like, 3 Hours Capital, all that stuff, they're all gone. We've cleansed it. And now the serious people are coming in, right? We have the BTC ETF coming. ETH's going to get an ETF. TradFi is here. Institutions are here. We're maturing as an industry. Sure, we're maturing as an industry, and I even put a tweet out about this the other day. We are maturing as an industry. That's true, from like a adoption perspective. But then on the other side, you still got all the scams, right? And you still got like the scams being normalized, and you still got the insider trading, you still got the grifting, you still got all that crap. So like on net, it's basically the same. And again, the reason why I speak up about this is because everyday people are just going to keep, like, I guess, not wanting to be part of this industry. We're not going to be able to attract the best and brightest people if they hate the industry. There's a lot of people that you talk to outside of crypto, they know nothing about it except the scams, because that's the thing that gets the headlines. If you go and look at the headlines on mainstream kind of news sites, maybe not the mainstream financial sites because they actually go a little bit more in depth, but like just mainstream news sites in general, it's always the scams. And even like the big popular kind of YouTube channels that aren't crypto YouTube channels, so someone like CoffeeZilla, for example, that talks about crypto, they only talk about the scams. Like, and that's what gets the views. So if you were a regular everyday person looking at the industry from the outside, you would only really see the scams. You wouldn't see the good stuff happening within the industry. And that's why I think we've got such a bad reputation here. And then, of course, if you see that the president of the United States is engaging in this behavior and is doing this stuff and doing this insider trading and grifting, then your thoughts on this industry is just going to be worse and worse. So my hope is that eventually we get the good crypto legislation in, and eventually, like, I guess I can't even believe I'm trying to say this, but like maybe they stop doing the scamming and grifting. I actually don't believe they will. I think that they're going to keep doing it because why not? Like, no one's stopping them, and they obviously don't care. And white collar crime is never punished, really. It's very rare for it to be punished. So, like, I say that maybe we get to a point where they stop doing it. Maybe that happens when, if the Democrats coming back into power, if we're talking about like a US-centric point of view here. But then we get the other side of it where, because politics is so divided in the US, the Democrats would probably just come in and start trying to destroy crypto again. So, like, we can't win. It's just frustrating, right? Like, when you look at it from that perspective, you either have the person who's pro-crypto, but then also, like, the pro-scamming and the pro-grifting and the pro-insider trading to go with it, or you have the Democrats that are, like, anti-crypto, but they're not using crypto as a scamming, grifting vehicle. Yes, they're doing their own kind of insider trading and other shit elsewhere, but they're not necessarily doing it within crypto, but they are waging a war on crypto, and they are kind of hurting adoption of crypto. So this is just a shit situation for us. Like this, like, what would you take? Maybe, I don't know. You could argue that it's better that we have Trump than the Democrats because of the fact that, oh yeah, okay, he's scamming and grifting or whatever, but like that's worth it because he's advancing through a legislation that will survive even if the Democrats come into power. I can buy that. I can buy that point of view. I can vibe with that. But then you could also make the argument that, well, what if the Democrats get back into power and there's been enough kind of, I guess, like come to Jesus moment, if you will, for them over the 4 years that they weren't in power, that they decide, well, we're not going to be hostile towards crypto anymore. We're actually going to be friendly towards it. And then we get like the friendly administration without the scamming. Yeah, I could buy that view as well. I don't put any odds on either view, right? Like, I don't put like a percentage odds on what chance either view is of happening here. And you could probably say that, the views are naive or it's just like wishful thinking, but those are the kind of things there. But that's just the general thing on the US side of things as well. I guess relating it back to what I was saying about the fact that it's hard to be in an industry where this stuff's happening. And like, I keep thinking to myself, it's all right. Ethereum's good. Ethereum people are great. We're working on things. When I just see all this stuff happening, right? So it does get to me. It really does, because I'm someone who wears his heart on his sleeve, to use that expression. Things get to me a lot. And that's why I like to take breaks from things. That's why I think I like not being on crypto Twitter so much, because things do get to me. I try not to let them, but they just do, guys. It's just the way I am as a person here. And I really don't like seeing the quote unquote bad guys win. And I'm not talking about like just what's happening with Trump and all that, but also within crypto, all the scamming and grifting going on, all the influencers scamming each other, all the meme coin scamming going on. Like, I called that out at the time as well. It was all fucking grift and a scam, guys. It did nothing good for the industry. And here we are, as it exists today, where a lot of the industry is very depressed because there hasn't been an alt season for a while. And they don't really have exposure to ETH and BTC because they sold it all, especially ETH when ETH crashed and all that. And especially as ETH continues to go up, they're like, oh my God, what's going on? When alt season, right? So yeah, from that perspective, I think that's just the way I kind of view things there. And then one last thing before I wrap up today's episode, I just realized I've gone for an hour here. A few of you in the Daily Gwei Discord channel have been saying that, like, because we were talking about the fact that I don't do refuels as often anymore, and you were saying that you're happy for me to just do episodes on anything. It doesn't have to be crypto. And I was like, oh, well, so I'm going to be like a vlogger now. I'm going to start like my vlogging career. Honestly, guys, my life is not that interesting. I don't think anyone wants to see a video of me working out. That's, as you guys know, I've taken my fitness a lot more seriously over this year. And my mornings are basically dedicated to my fitness routine. But like, I don't think anyone's going to want to watch me do that. And then the rest of my day is filled with various different things. I'm actually working on a big project right now, which has nothing to do with crypto. It's completely outside of crypto. I'm not ready to reveal what it is just yet, but I will eventually once it's finished. But it's something that I'm super excited about, something very, very different to crypto, something that I've been wanting to do for many, many years now. And I finally got started on it. And honestly, it's been really, really awesome, guys. Like, it's awesome. Like, as I said, it's very different. And I'm not going to say what it is because then I'll kind of give away the surprise there. But I'm also not going to make my videos about that. I'm not going to vlog myself doing that. I'm not going to vlog myself or live stream myself playing video games. I do play a lot of video games these days as well. Not going to live stream myself doing that. I just don't think it's interesting. Like, I understand and I appreciate you guys thinking my life is super interesting and wanting to get more content from me. But like obviously this channel has always been about Ethereum. Obviously the refuel has always been about Ethereum. And you guys know my rule is that I just do episodes when I feel like it these days. And that's true for anything. Like, I don't think I would do an episode on like my life, right, for example, or what I'm doing in my day-to-day life, and not talk about Ethereum as well, because Ethereum is part of my day-to-day life. So I don't think I'll be doing any of that. Like, unless you guys really want it, like, unless you guys beg me, it's like, oh my God, I need to know what you're doing with your life. I'm like, okay, well, all right, I'll give you a little bit of an insight into it. But, you know, as I said, I don't think it's going to be that interesting. But yeah, anyway, if you do want to talk to me about those things, you can always talk to me about it in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. But as I said, that project I'm working on, I'm not going to tell you what it is until it's done. Well, not done, but like until it's like 90% done or something like that. Because you know those things with projects that you start and then like there's a lot of them you don't end up finishing. And then if you've told people about it, you kind of feel embarrassed when they ask about it. Where like, oh, well, how are you going with your project? And then you say, oh, yeah, I mean, it's good. And then really in your head, you're like, fuck, I haven't worked on it in like 3 months. And then they ask again, like when you see them again, you're like, yeah, look, man, I fell off the wagon. I fell off the wagon. I haven't been working on that thing. Yeah, so, I mean, I hesitated even like announcing it to you guys that I was working on something like that. But hey, I'm confident that I'm going to get to the end of it, because I'm, as I said, super excited about it. I haven't been this excited about something that I've worked on in a very long time. Probably since I started really getting serious about like being part of Ethereum in 2018. That's how, I guess, reinvigorating this thing has been for me. And you'll know what it is eventually. Even if I don't finish it, I'll tell you guys what it was. I'm not going to keep you hanging forever. But yeah, anyway, I think on that note, that's enough about me. It's enough about everything today. As I said, I'll try to do one more episode before DevConnect. And then, yeah, hopefully see a lot of you guys at DevConnect there. But anyway, thanks everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next time. Thanks, everyone.